Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Soulcast Media live event. I am so excited you are all here. If everybody can see me and hear me okay, can you please give me a thumbs up on your end? Or you can just type into the chat function and just say yes. Sometimes with these like technologies and doing virtual events, you just never know. I can see you all. I have the chat going. I was actually typing behind the scenes, responding to all of you. And I'm just so thrilled. We have such a great audience here today, dialed in from all over the world. And that's the beauty of putting an event on like this. I mean, we really can draw an international crowd, but also here in the States. I'm here in the US. My guest is also here in the US. So, again, welcome. So, we are here today talking all things pitching yourself at work. This is a topic I'm so excited to dive into, and we are going to be sharing a lot of our tips on how do you talk about yourself? What do you say? How do you say it in a way that doesn't feel, awkward or maybe as if like you're boasting? And here's another thing. How do you pitch yourself in different environments? These are all things that I think are really important to think about at work, but the truth is a lot of times we never really have that opportunity to strategically think about how we approach it, which is why the fact you're all here today is a great chance for you to think about this, regardless of, hey, if you're jumping into a meeting later, if you're jumping into an important meeting tomorrow or next week and you got to pitch yourself. Well, today's all about that. So before we dive into today's topic, I want to do a quick intro of who I am. If this is the first time you're meeting me, I want to say hello. If you've been to my many Soulcast Media live events, welcome back. I host these about every other week or so quite often. And these events are always around topics like this: pitching yourself, advocating for yourself, presentation skills, general communication skills. And the reason why is because I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Soulcast Media, and we specialize in all things communications. We've been around for about 5, 6 years now, but prior to Soulcast Media, I used to be a former television journalist. So I was on TV reporting the news, kind of like, holding this microphone, and I was all around. I always tell people, though, the reason why I started my company, Soulcast Media, was because the truth was I was terrible at communicating when I first started out. Part of it was, I consider myself fairly introverted, and I grew up in an environment at home where communications was not a skill that, frankly, my parents told me to practice to something to work on. It was always about just studying and working hard. Now, for many of you, and you probably have experienced this, you go out into the working world and you're like, whoa, communications is actually quite important. It's not just about doing the work. So, after about 10 years in news and after winning an Emmy Award at the ABC station in San Diego, I was like, you know what? Let me take all that I've learned in the last 10 years on TV and let me teach it to folks. And this is where we are today. So, we're here, we're talking about all things pitching yourself. And you know what? Let's get started. I want you to know that this event is for you. So, before I introduce my guest up here, I want you to know that as we are talking, and this is live, as Jodi and I are talking and sharing our tips on this, be sure to add your comments, add your thoughts in the chat, ask us, and put in any questions you have because ultimately, this is for you. So I'm really excited to invite my guest, Jodi Glickman, up. She is the CEO of Great on the Job. She's an entrepreneur, an author, and a fellow mom as well. So Jodi, I'm so excited that you're here. Hi, Jodi.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks so much for having me.
It's funny. So for folks who are watching us, when Jodi and I first jumped on behind the scenes, Jodi and I were like, this is funny. This is the first time Jodi and I are actually meeting. And so you're all watching Jodi and I talk, but Jodi and I were saying how we're like, I feel like we know each other. And it's because both of us really, yeah, we're both on LinkedIn. I think we're both quite active on LinkedIn. So we're just excited to share this experience with you. But Jodi, I know I did a quick intro of who you are, but please share with folks a little bit about you and the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I will. It's so fun to see all these names from all over the world. I love it. Thank you for joining, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. I am the CEO and founder of Great on the Job, a leadership development and communication training firm. I am incredibly passionate about developing talent. next generation talent, rising talent, all of you who are headed into the workplace for the first time or have been there for a little while. And really, what I help people most with, which is super in line with what Jessica and her team does, is I find in the world of work, there's this big gap that you are so smart and talented and ambitious and driven, and you've got these amazing technical skills. And we all spend a lot of time really developing our technical skills. And yet there's a gap in the workplace in terms of our interpersonal skills and our technical skills. And so you don't want any advice from me on anything like merger math or writing a marketing brief, but where I can be really helpful, right, is helping you communicate strategically, effectively, and persuasively every day in every conversation. And today we're going to talk about pitching specifically, which is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. But like Jessica, I actually didn't start my career there either. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Latin America and then an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. So I've done a lot of different things. Started my company in the mid 2000s and really just love working with corporate clients, academic clients, clients all over the world, helping talent get better at their jobs, love their jobs, and be incredibly impactful and find meaning in what they do.
I love your story. And I think you and I are doing very similar work because we both experience a similar kind of aha moment where we're like, wait, there are so many brilliant people out there who are doing amazing work. But like you kind of said, and like I always say too, doing good work is essentially half of what we have to do at work. Of course, we got to do work, but really rarely are we taught the other side, which is the communications part of it, the pitching yourself part of it. And I think for many of us, and I know for me, initially the idea of pitching myself, it's kind of like, oh, why do I have to pitch myself? Like,
Right.
can't my work speak for itself? So, Jodi, I want to kick off with this question. Like, why is pitching yourself so important to do at work? And really, why can't the work just speak for itself? Like, I think many of us hope to sometimes.
Yeah, such a good question. So, there's a myth out there that if you do really good work and you put your head down and you work really hard and you put in the effort, that you will be rewarded. And that's just not the way the world works. There's no world in which you can just do really good work and be acknowledged for it and recognized. You need to build your network. You need to have people know you and trust you and respect you and admire you. Sonia Sotomayor, Supreme Court Justice, says there is, virtue and obscurity is rewarded only in heaven. To succeed in this world, you have to be known to people. And it's not about, going out there and telling everyone how amazing you are and being a jerk. People really recoil at the idea of self-promotion, Jessica. But there is something to be said for building authentic, meaningful relationships and connections and being able to talk about the amazing work that you do so that you can bring other people into your orbit, so that your ideas can have impact, so that you can sell yourself and your ideas, pitch yourself and your ideas, get people on board with what's important to you.
What I am very excited about today's session is I think you and I are going to be sharing some strategies, some tips on how one can do it, and how we can actually be able to do it in a way that doesn't feel, like strange or weird. And I think back to, early on when I first started working, and I started to see how, like, yeah, I do have to get better at this. And I would look around, and this is back when I was a journalist. I will look around, and trust me, in a newsroom, you got a lot of loud, probably similar with investment banking, you got a lot of loud, charismatic, very well-spoken people in the office, right? And they are the one that get a lot of the airtime, essentially, right? And then you, and I don't know about you, but like for me, I was always kind of known as that quiet person in the meeting where I think people knew that, Jessica was reliable, was capable, could do good work. But at the same time, it's like if I didn't say anything, how are they going to keep me top of mind? And that was when I realized that, like I said, it's 50-50. You deliver, you hit your KPIs, you get the things done, but at the same time, you have to actually talk about it. So then my first question for you, Jodi, is how does one actually do that? How does one talk about their work without feeling strange about it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Okay, I'm excited to start there, but I just have to interject because I'm watching the comments too. And we just have someone who dialed in from Lusaka, Zambia, Ketty. And you were in my crossword this week. It was what's the capital of Zambia? And so I'm so excited to see it there. Like, I was like, oh my God, I know Lusaka from that. Okay, but here's, sorry, that was a sidebar. It's just how often do you have someone dial in from Lusaka, Zambia and feel like, okay, I just know exactly where you are. Here's a great way to talk about yourself without feeling like a jerk. And it's so interesting because it's a really simple yet incredibly powerful hack, let's call it. And this is a little bit different from pitching yourself per se. We'll go into sort of the methodology for that, but there's an opportunity that we lose out on all of the time, all of us. And it's when someone says to you, "How are you?" And in that like brief moment, when someone says, "How are you?" most of us answer with, "I'm fine, thanks," or "I'm good, thanks," or, "Oh my God, I'm so busy," or "I'm slammed," or "I'm exhausted," right? Get away from that. There's, get over yourself. I always say, this like idea of being busy as a status symbol, we're over it. When someone says to you, "How are you?" it's an amazing opportunity for you to talk about yourself in a really positive and powerful way. Your answer should be, "I'm great. Thank you so much. We just landed this new client account and it's super exciting." Or, "I'm great, thank you. I'm really excited. I just got staffed on this new project with the Nestle team and I'm learning a ton from the management team." Or, "I'm great, thank you. I'm about to throw my hat in the ring for blank." Right? You can talk about something that is meaningful and interesting to you in a way that prompts a conversation that you want to have, and in a way that shows you in a really positive light. You can say, "I'm really excited about something. I'm honored. I'm working hard on this. You know what? I'm really busy, but I'm learning a ton because I just started in a new role." There's so many ways that you can kind of lay it out for someone so that you can get credit for what you do without feeling like a jerk. "Oh, you're so braggadocious."
I love that tip, and seeing how we can use a question like when somebody asks you, "How are you?" How many of us get asked that question in a typical day? Probably at least once or twice, right? And this might be from somebody who you may or may not engage with that often, but taking that question, "How are you?" as a door that you open that can unleash a lot of, now I call them like talking points, because
Yeah.
oftentimes when someone's asking you, "How are you?" it's like they're trying to figure out, okay, how can we get the conversation started, right? And so you are essentially giving them, opportunities for them to be like, "Oh, Jodi, you said that you are working on this project. Now I'm curious, right? Now I want to ask you a follow-up question, being like, well, tell me about it. What's exciting? What has it been like doing A, B, and C?" And now it suddenly is a conversation where instead of just making a "Hi, how are you? Good, how are you?" it's kind of like the conversation awkwardly stops there. I love how you're saying "How are you?" is a great way to enter the conversation while keeping yourself memorable. I love that.
Yeah, and I like how you positioned as a door opening. That's what it is. It's an opportunity. Take it as such. Imagine today if I was talking to someone this morning and they said, "How are you?" and I said, "I'm great. I'm going on Soulcast Media Live with Jessica Chen this morning." And they say, "Oh, who's Jessica Chen?" Or, "Oh my God, I love Jessica. I listen to her every week." And then all of a sudden we have a conversation where if I had just said, "You know what? I'm so busy. I'm in meetings all day," that conversation would have never happened.
So this is great because we're taking a very common question, "How are you?" and we're providing people, different ways of thinking about how they can answer that question that essentially just makes them sound interesting. And I think that's the part. It makes you sound interesting, and interesting gets the conversation flowing. So then I have to pivot now, Jodi. We talked about "How are you?" as a good entry point, but what if you have to be the one to find and create that opportunity to pitch yourself, where it's
Mhm.
not that organic "How are you?" but it's like you're like, "Oh man, I have to like be able to talk about X, Y, and Z." How does one approach something like that?
Yeah, great question. So here's the thing. I'm going to answer it like in a couple of parts. But the first thing I'll say is the overarching goal of any great pitch. There is a singular goal to any great pitch, and it's this. It's a second conversation, nothing more and nothing less. And so if you think about it, right, the goal is to connect with someone on a human level so that they're curious, they're interested, they're intrigued, and they want to talk more. That's really the goal when you have to pitch yourself. It's not like you're going to get hired in one conversation or raise capital, right? Or, get a promotion based on one conversation. It's pretty unrealistic to think about it that way. And I think that's part of the problem with pitching is that we set our sights so high and think, okay, everything's riding on it. I got 60 seconds and I'm going to get hired. And it's like, that's not how the world works. Okay. You have a very short window of time. And what you're trying to do is pique my interest, get me excited, get me engaged, want me to continue the conversation. So let's keep that sort of aside, that's our goal. And so the question that you started with was then, so how do you start it, right? How do you actually intentionally craft a compelling pitch when you actually are trying to get something out of a conversation? And what I'll say is 99% of the time when we are introducing ourselves to someone in any context, whether it's professionally, whether it's personally, we often start by looking backwards. And not even often, like almost all the time. Hi, I'm Jodi Glickman. It's so nice to meet you. I spent 5 years in public service, and then I went into the Peace Corps, and then I got my MBA, and then I started great on the job, and now I teach at Kellogg. Right? Or, hi, if you're looking for a role, hi, I've been working in digital marketing for 3 years at PepsiCo, and now I'm interested in transitioning into your opportunity or your role. And the truth is, with all due respect, I say this with love, like no one really cares. I don't really care that much about what you've done and where you come from. I care way more about where you're going, what you're excited about, what you're passionate about, what drives you, what you're trying to do with your life, which means the way you start any great pitch is you lead with your destination. You start by looking forward. You tell me, like right off the bat, hi, I'm Jodi Glickman. I'm really interested in improving health outcomes for women and children in the NICU. And I've been working at HCA for 5 years, and I'm super excited to talk to you today. And that came into my head because I was with them last week in Nashville. They're a client of mine. But when I introduce myself, right, I start with, I'm the CEO of Great on the Job. I'm incredibly passionate about developing next generation talent. I care about making the world of work better, which is actually how you started too, Jessica, right? You talked about Soulcast Media and what we do, and then you went to your backstory. But most people actually start by going backwards. And we tell you like all the things we've done. And it's hard to connect that way with people. Maybe I didn't go to the same school as you. Maybe I didn't work in media or telecom, or I don't know what you did. But if you talk about what you're trying to accomplish, what you care about, what you're interested in, that's how you bring other people into the conversation. So you have to start by asking yourself a question, which is, what's my destination? Like, what am I trying to get out of a specific conversation? If I'm meeting a senior leader and I'm trying to make a good impression, what do I start with? I'll pause there because then we can go back and forth.
I love the idea and the approach of pitching yourself and taking that proactive approach of pitching yourself as being clear-minded of the destination that you want to get to. And, thinking about, the confidence part of pitching yourself, right? So let's say you put yourself out there and, you start talking about yourself, but the response from the other side isn't necessarily the response you expected, or the conversation is going a different way.
Yeah.
How do you quickly pivot or, adjust your communications when the conversation is going a different direction from what you wanted it to go?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. It's a great question. Let me just say one thing before we go into that, which is because there is one of the things you talked about, which was, it's the same thing with your career. If you just sort of assume things will happen and leave it to chance, it's probably not going in the direction you want it to go in. And that's the same with the pitch. Like, you actually have to know what your destination is. No one can figure that out for you. And in terms of the methodology, the way that I sort of think about and teach and write about pitch is that it's a 3-step process. It's your destination. Where are you going? What do you care about? Then it's your backstory. What have you done that's interesting, unique, compelling? And then you bring it all together and connect the dots. And so in response to your question, what do you do when it's not going in the right way? It's not landing, the person's not interesting, you're not connecting. The thing I always say is a pitch isn't a monologue. It's actually a dialogue. It's a conversation between two people. And in an ideal world, you'd know your destination and you'd lead with it. And then you'd have your backstory ready to bring out as and when necessary, and the way you're going to connect the dots. If it sort of goes off the rails, if you go in a different direction, there's a couple of options. The first is, I always say, what do people like to talk about most? Themselves. So, right, turning it to asking a question of the person you're speaking about, right? If they don't maybe bite, let's say you talk about this new initiative that you're starting and they don't ask you a single question about it. And it looks like they have no interest, right? And you're feeling like, oh, I'm probably not going to get very far. You might turn it them to them, which is, so what's one thing at work right now that's really exciting or fun or interesting for you? Or what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? Right? Asking a question that actually you would be interested in learning about. I always say, don't ask someone like, what do you think about, the Fed's, rate hikes on monetary policy? Like, forget it. Don't try and be smart. Actually ask a question that you're interested and you care about. So that's one way, is turn the tables and ask a question. And the other is, if you don't feel like you've kind of gelled or connected with a person, and I'd love your perspective on this, Jessica, you can end the conversation, cut the cord. You don't have to stick around and talk to someone for 15 minutes if it's painful to both of you. It's very appropriate to say, it was so nice to meet you. I know there's a lot of people here who are looking forward to talking to you. I have some people I'd like to meet. Enjoy the conference. I'm going to go, take a walk around the room. You don't have to lie. You don't have to make up like, oh, I have to go, meet my friend. You could just be transparent. It was really nice to meet you. I'm going to go, get a drink and have another few conversations. So I would say pivot it and try and turn the conversation on them, or end it gracefully and exit the conversation.
I love how you pointed that out and how many of us have been stuck in awkward conversations where we're like, oh my gosh, how do I exit this conversation without feeling strange about it? And I love how you almost like you give us all the permission to say, you know what? Let me just say thank you. It was really great meeting you, and just saying it in that tone, right? It was really great meeting you. I enjoyed, learning about your work or whatever it was that you initially talked about. But I'm gonna go grab another drink, or whatever it is, to exit the conversation so that you can continue to move on. Now, this makes me kind of think about this idea of pitching yourself, but how do you pitch yourself for asking something that you really want at work? Thinking about things like projects you want to get on, pitching a project that could really accelerate your career or help you learn a new skill. Because what I've learned, and I think many of us might have, felt this before, that there are opportunities that happen and are presented to us at work, but many times the ones that we might want to do that might interest us, these are opportunities we have to create ourselves, meaning we have to take the initiative to ask for it, to go up to our manager, whoever, and say, hey, I have this idea. And in many ways, it's you're pitching yourself for this project, but how do you do it? And let me share kind of like one of the
Yeah.
tips that I would say. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Jodi. But in the communications work that we do, we always say, if you're asking for something that you want, essentially pitching yourself for a project, if it's a new project specifically, you have to be able to, and this is a framework that I have actually in my upcoming book. It's called the SAW framework, and it stands for SAW. S, and by the way, if folks want to write this down, this is just a good way of framing your communications. S starts for, you got to make a strong case. The A is align objectives. And the W is then why you say now, why are you asking for this? I think a lot of times when we ask for something, when we're pitching ourselves for a project, we start with, why do we want this? But
Mm-hmm.
instead, you got to flip it around. You got to start with the S, the strong case. Why are you asking for this now? What's timely about it? How is it going to benefit the team, the organization, whatever maybe other initiatives the team's working on? And then the A, align objectives, is making sure that whatever your manager cares about, you are aligning objectives to that.
Mhm.
So, okay, let's say, for example, we always know companies and teams are always talking about budget and resources, right? We always have a lack of that. So
Right.
if you can answer that question of where would the time, the budget, the additional resources, because oftentimes projects, it takes that. If you can answer that question and you can get ahead of it, suddenly you're aligning objectives to what's probably on your manager's mind. And then the W is, okay, why are you asking for this? Why are you qualified to ask for this? Why are you in the position to ask for this? Maybe because you've had an experience or you saw something or you had a conversation. So I love this framework. And this is just kind of like my golden nugget I want to drop here for everybody to think about when you pitch yourself for something that you want. The SAW framework is a great way to think about it. But Jodi, I want to get your thoughts on that. Or do you have a similar sort of like framework on how people can think about pitching themselves for something that they want at work?
Well, first of all, I love the soft framework. So it's strong case, aligned goals, and then why you're right. Is that the third one? So
Exactly.
it's interesting. I would say that I think destination backstory connect the dots aligns pretty well with the language that you use. The way that it kind of goes through in my brain is if you're pitching yourself for any type of opportunity at work, you need to lead with your destination. What is it you want to do? And why is it important, right? Why is it going to benefit the team? Why do you think you're the right person for it? Why is this a great opportunity? And I'll give you an example of how I pitched myself for an opportunity in a moment. And then if you go to backstory, it is like, what is it about you that you bring to the table that is unique, right? Here you said align with the company's goals, but why are you going to be the right person to be able to do this for the organization? And then I would say in connecting the dots, like, why is this the right time at the right moment for you to have this opportunity? I often say, think about bringing your past, present, and future together, or really answering that question to someone like, why does this make sense for the organization right now? Why is this the right place for us to put our resources? So let me give you an example of I was an investment banker and I was a healthcare investment banker. And I didn't really like healthcare, which makes it difficult to do your job. And I also was not the strongest associate. And my best friend was working in consumer retail banking. So she was handling companies like Prada and Gucci and Armani, and I was dying of envy. Here I am working with, drug companies and doing stents and wound care, and it was like, and health insurance, and it was really not my thing. And I really wanted to do some work in consumer retail. But I couldn't just say to my boss, like, hey, can you put me on a consumer retail company? Because, like, I get it. And that'll be easy for me and fun. That wasn't going to fly.
Yeah.
So I went in and I said to my boss, if there's ever an opportunity for me to run. Oh, and the other piece is I thought about the world in which those kinds of deals went on. And healthcare didn't have any small sell side assets. Consumer retail had all these small assets that weren't super high profile. So I went into my boss one day and I said, listen, I would love as a senior associate an opportunity to run my own small sell side deal. I think it'd be a great opportunity for me to really build my skill set. And for Goldman, like I would love to take any asset that's not high profile that no one really cares about, right? Like give it to me. I want that thing that like no one else wants. We would have probably referred to it sort of as whatever language we used, okay? But it wasn't this big, sexy, shiny thing. Like I wanted the crappy deal that no one wanted. And I said, I think it'd be a great opportunity for me. And it's great for the business because I'll take something that no one else wants to deal with. And my boss was like, that's a great idea. I don't have any small sell side deals in healthcare, though. Would you be willing to do something in another industry? And I said, well, if you need me to, I'd be willing to like go outside healthcare. And so he said, great, I'll keep it in mind. Nothing happened right away, but 2 months later, I got a phone call and my boss was like, I have an amazing opportunity for you. It's a small sell side asset. No one's clamoring for it. It'd be a great opportunity for you and it'd be a huge impact to the bank. And I was like, love, I want it. And he's like, okay, it's Hickory Farms of Ohio. So I was like, I got like a meat and cheese basket at the end of the deal. I didn't get a beautiful pair of shoes. But the idea was, right, it is this, destination, like, what is it I want to do? Why? What's the benefit to me and to the organization? Backstory, why am I the right person? I was at the right point in my career. I was willing to dig in. I didn't care about getting credit for it. And then connecting the dots, it's a win-win for everyone.
I love your story because what you essentially shared with folks, and this is the lesson here, is you pitched yourself for a project, which it wasn't such a project at the time. And that's the thing. A lot of times when we ask for something, we should not expect it to be, oh yeah,
Right.
we have something right for you right now. Like it often doesn't work like that. But what you are doing, I think this is an important lesson, is you are proactively planting the seed.
Right.
And planting the seed is part of kind of what we were talking about earlier, which is, staying top of mind, right? Nobody is going to know what you want unless you say it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess some people might know, like, oh, yeah, Jessica or Jodi, they might be interested in this. But ultimately, and this is what I want to reiterate, your manager, your team, they're busy too. I mean, we're all busy. We got projects, we got to dos, right? But ultimately, if you want something, you got to ask for it. And even though your manager might be like, oh, well, there's nothing really right now. Number one, don't feel dejected. Don't feel rejected. Rather, just be like, oh, okay, good. I'm proud that I asked for it. But not only that, and this is actually one thing that I want to say. One of the things that I've been telling folks, and this is kind of like a saying that I often reiterate because it's so simple, but you got to get into the mindset of whatever you say it twice, even more than twice sometimes, because just saying it once is planting that seed. But like I said, people forget, people are busy. So say it twice, follow up, circle back, do it 2 or 3 times. But of course, you got to be smart about it. It's not just being like, hey, FYI, or hey, what's going on, or hey, circling back, right? You want to try to be, thoughtful about it. So you're still keeping your idea or what you're asking for top of mind because you got to do it, but to do it in a way that's not like, okay, there comes Jessica again, asking, following up again. But I do think this idea of saying it twice and keeping it in mind, it can also take a lot of that even self-doubt and even kind of like, oh, should I or shouldn't I? It's like, yeah, you should do it. So
And you know how I always say, how I personally am super appreciative if someone reaches out to me and I don't respond and then they reach back out again in a very generous way. Like, I'm sure you missed it, not sure if you saw this. I appreciate it as opposed to feeling like it's annoying. So I think that's a great point. There's no one is going to ever ding you for asking for something again. They really won't. I mean, and everyone is busy. What I always say is no one will ever care more about your career than you will, like, full stop. So you have to be the one to take ownership of your career. You have to be the one to raise your hand and ask for opportunities that are important and interesting to you. And as you said before earlier, right, your power words, when you're excited and enthusiastic and optimistic about something, you bring so much more energy to the table than when you're working on something that isn't really exciting. People pick up on that and they notice that. That's why when you do lead with your destination, it changes everything, because if you're not really excited about something, right, you're probably not going to spend all this time pitching it. The one thing I'll say about that is I think the hard part, Jessica, that we haven't talked about is most of the time what I hear is like, but I don't know what my destination is. I don't actually know what I want to be pitching. I'm just not happy. I'm not excited. Like, I don't know what I want to do. And that's where a lot of work comes in to figure out what would, right? I always say, think about an area you'd love to learn. Think about an area where you know you can excel. Think about someone you want to network it with or build a relationship with. Those are good points to kind of figure out, okay, what actually might be my destination? What should I actually be pitching?
And that is something that, it takes introspection, it takes reflection to be like, okay, I am not very happy right now in my current situation. Maybe work doesn't excite me or it doesn't feel very fulfilling, or maybe it kind of does, but maybe I feel like there could be something else. And I think, I don't think any of us should ever stay in a position for too long where we're not feeling energized or even excited about the work. Now, let's be real. Work is not always going to be fun and amazing, exciting. Like sometimes work is just work, right? But I think ultimately, if we can keep in mind, like, why are we doing this work and understanding whether it's impacting something we're passionate about or making a difference in this, like, if you can't even get excited sometimes about the bigger vision, then maybe it's time to think about, okay, what else who else do I need to talk to? Where else do I need to be? What skills do I need to up level so that I can get to, where I would like to go? And I think, taking that time to reflect, like for me, I had that moment when I was transitioning from being a journalist to starting my own career. And I loved being a journalist. I absolutely did. I learned so much. I won an award for it. But it's similar. I always had this like nagging feeling, well, what else could I do that could equally excite me? And so, to be honest, it took me a few months of just like, to be honest, kind of being kind of lost. Like, what do I want to do now? What do I want to do next? Right. But I do feel like giving yourself that time, that space. I'm a huge journal. Like I love journaling. And I think that has helped. Reading books has helped me. But ultimately, I'm so glad I did it instead of just kind of like, I think oftentimes we can go on cruise control, right? Of just like, okay, I know how to do the work. Let me just do the work. But it's like being able to, pivot your career sometimes can be one of the most exciting things. It really can. So yes, Jodi, in regards to destination, if you don't know what that destination is, there's no better time than now than to start exploring. That's what I think.
Couldn't agree more.
So we've shared a lot of tips. We really did in terms of like pitching yourself and how do you communicate it? How do you respond to how are you in a more strategic way, which I love. We share the soft framework. You talked about destination. But ultimately, in order for anybody to implement any of these things, it all has to start up here, right? We have to feel that confidence and that conviction that whatever we're asking for or whatever we're talking about, we truly believe in, right? We're looking forward to that. So Jodi, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this, but as we start to wrap up here, how and what's that one tip you can give folks on how they can get into that mindset of pitching yourself and not being afraid to do it, asking for what you want, advocating for yourself? Like, how can one get into that mindset when maybe right now it feels terrifying or even confusing?
I think the thought I'd leave everyone with is this: no one's going to put as much, no one's going to remember your pitch the same way you do. You can like try it out. The worst that happens is it doesn't land. The worst that happens is you ask for an opportunity and it doesn't come to fruition or you get shot down. You're going to put more thought into, oh God, did I say it right? Did I overstep my bounds? Was I too assertive? Did I do it the right way? Was I confident? Should I have changed my ask? They're going to just respond in the moment and then it moves on. And so I think there's some level of like self-awareness and like lack of focus on yourself, which is kind of, don't worry about it. Even if you screw up, it's okay. This isn't the end of the world. It's not like everything is riding on this. That's why I said, if you take the goal of the pitch to be a second conversation, nothing more, nothing less, 50% of the time you're going to get it and 50% of the time you won't, and that's okay, right? And then you work on refining your pitch. I always say different person, different pitch. You've got to customize. You may pick different pieces of your backstory next time to support your destination, or you tweak your destination. It really is about getting reps and recognizing that like the weight of the world is not on your shoulders. You can have a pitch that doesn't land and it's okay. You recover and you get up and you try it again the next day. This isn't something that has to be so overwhelming and scary. So I would say, like, dip your toe in the water, try it on, practice, come up with a destination, try it out, see how it lands, and then go from there and adjust and refine and tweak. But the world isn't riding on this singular conversation. You're going to have a zillion opportunities all day, every day to continually pitch yourself. And the more you do it, the better you get at it and the more confident you feel.
Totally. I can't agree more in terms of the more you do it, the easier it gets. So as we wrap up, Jodi, I just wanted to ask you, if folks want to follow you and continue to stay connected with you, maybe ask you questions about pitching yourself, how can they do that?
Best way to find me is on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active, which is just my profile is LinkedIn / Jodi Glickman, JodiGlickman, or you can find me at greatonthejob.com. And I would welcome any of your questions or comments. Would be happy to follow up if anyone has anything that they want to share. And Jessica, thank you so much for having me today.
I'm so glad that you're able to join us. And I know we had some, little technical glitches here and there, but ultimately I think, Jodi and I, we hopefully you were able to, hear and take in some of the tips that we shared. And kind of like as a final, if you enjoyed this session, I do invite you to RSVP for our future Soulcast Media Lives coming up. And trust me, we got a lot coming up. And part of the reason why, and I'm now just starting to share this. So I have an upcoming book, coming out in about 2 months in July. And this book is my first book all about communications. It's called Smart, Not Loud: How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons. And because it comes out in about 2 months, we are hosting a lot of special events leading up to celebrate the launch. I just dropped the website here in the chat. If you want to learn more about the book, you can pre-order the book right now today. And as part of that, we're giving some amazing bonuses away. We're putting on some free exclusive events for those who pre-order it. So if the book sounds interesting to you, it's all about getting into that right mindset. If being loud or extroverted or being that dominant person, being assertive, that's not necessarily your style. It was never my style. But how can you still get noticed at work for all the right reasons? This is the book for you. So check out that website, learn more about the book. RSVP for our upcoming events because we got a lot of special ones coming up. And if you and I are not already connected, LinkedIn is definitely the place. I'm most active here on this platform as well. So connect with Jodi and I, send us a DM, let us know that you are here. And hey, let us know what you enjoyed about the session too. So Jodi, thank you so much for, spending your afternoon with us. And for everybody who tuned in and watched and listened, we're so grateful for you and we hope to see you soon. All right, take care, everybody.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.